Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Growing Social Now. I'm Barbara Rosgoni. I'm so happy to see you, and I would encourage you to subscribe wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. Today, I have with me a very exciting guest, and my guest name is Stel Valavanis. And Stel is a security expert. Let me tell you a little bit about him. In fact, he's an internationally recognized security thought leader who leads a team of cybersecurity's most trusted experts. He's the CEO and founder of onShore Security. The Chicago-headquartered managed security firm is relied upon by top-tier organizations across a variety of highly regulated and information-sensitive sectors, including financial services, healthcare, government, global construction, and manufacturing. Stel is a member of Chicago Archangels and is an investor in a number of early-stage tech companies. He currently sits on the board of several leading nonprofits, including the ACLU of Illinois, where he advises on digital privacy. Stel is also an active alumnus of the University of Chicago. Fast-growing industry leader onShore Security was founded in 1991 as an extension of Stel's personal passion for keeping organizations secure, as they work towards their most ambitious goals amidst the dynamic backdrop of today's increasingly dangerous and complex digital world. And Stel, I got to say, I love your tagline that I saw on LinkedIn, because security gives us freedom. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, well, and this is a very important topic. I think security is something we take for granted until we don't have it anymore. So, and on social media, we all kind of bounce over there like it's a playground, and it can be a dangerous place to be. It goes beyond just posting pictures of family and friends and company updates. So I think this is going to be a fascinating conversation. So let's just dive right in. When we talk about privacy and social media, how can we use social media safely?
Well, remember, we're talking about privacy primarily. So, safe is let's say a relative term. There's, people who, for whom privacy matters a whole lot, and for people for whom privacy doesn't matter a whole lot, both in terms of how they feel, but also in terms of what kind of impact it could have on them, let's say financially, other ways. So, how do we break it down a little bit?
That'd be great. Yeah, if you could. Yeah, because I think it's kind of a really big world. So if you could break it down, that'd be great.
Yeah. So let's say you care a lot about, just personally, what people know about you, or, what people can find out about you. Well, now there's a big concern. Anything you put out there publicly is available to anybody. We call that OSINT, open source intelligence. And OSINT is a big part of a number of functions, and not just people in cybersecurity space, people in, let's say, media, advertising, whatever. They all leverage OSINT. Now, there are also companies that pay for access to information that isn't readily available publicly, but you've made it available in one way or another. Sometimes that's something that's, let's say, through a service, like Facebook, something like that, or in an e-commerce platform, like Amazon. If you're an e-commerce provider, you're riding the Amazon platform selling goods. There's intel that Amazon makes available to you that lets you target buyers, things like that. So those aren't technically OSINT, but it's amazing how much information can really get in the wild once the providers that consume that information now produce what they're producing with it, what their functions. And so when you piece it all together, it can be pretty powerful. Now we step into the next level of harm, and that's things like identity fraud, for instance, or phishing or whaling, which are the coin flip of the same thing. Going after a target with some kind of fraud, social engineering maneuver, and that information is very valuable to people like that. I'll also step a bit into an area where people kind of, let's say, are more neglectful, or at least just don't realize there's some cost, and that is the image that you have online. More and more employers are getting wise to leveraging the use of OSINT to understand how somebody's character or inclinations or whatnot. Maybe the most obvious cases were the Capitol riots on January 6th, where people's social media posts in some cases were the reason they were implicated. So anything you put out there can come back to you, can affect your career, can affect your privacy, can affect your pocketbook, can affect your shareholders, can affect your government and your politics, and frankly can affect your mind too if it really gets manipulated. We've seen examples of that. I hope you've seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix. A little bit extreme in some ways, but definitely not unrealistic. So
yeah, I would agree. And I think if people really get in touch with their emotions and they think about how they go on this roller coaster with social media all day long, it can be frightening. So yes, you really have to have a sense of presence. And I really think ownership, and you went into reputation. I mean, there's so many different things beyond the data that you share. It's like we have this digital persona that's following us around everywhere we go, and we created it and then everybody added to it as we went along. But wow. So how does this digital persona that we've got out there that's kind of projected that we can't even see bleed into your digital business life? And does it create an entrance for cyber criminals? Can they go and find what people are doing and get in that door?
Oh no, yeah. I mean, it's just one of many tools. So if you think about what does it take to build whatever, I don't know, a car, a house, whatnot. It doesn't take one tool, and if you're crippled in some way, you're going to slow down. It's the same for the criminal. They're going to look for many angles, and so it alone, OSINT alone, your profile, your information that you put out there on social media or other people put on your behalf, whatever is out there, is not alone going to magically make a cyber criminal jump into your chair and enact a fraudulent wire transfer or something like that. But it might just be enough for them to pretend there's somebody in your organization, or of course pretend you're you, to somebody maybe lower level, unsuspecting, and get a little more information and then move up the chain and talk to somebody else. I mean, if somebody wants to target you, that little bit of information can multiply. Now, if they're not targeting you, if they're doing something more, widespread, let's say, they'll be lazier, but don't think it is invaluable. The criminals will harvest this information and use it in things like phishing emails, whatnot. And, granted, it's not necessarily a clear, easy target for them, but you'd be surprised. They take 100 or 1,000 shots, and one or two of them happen to be soft. They get in, and they'll do a number of things: identity theft, wire transfer fraud, get you to install software so that then there's ransomware. I mean, it's just, the list goes on. It really is part of that, very, very valuable exposure.
Wow.
We talk about in cybersecurity.
Wow. There's a lot there. So for phishing emails, I think I know what they are, but could you just explain it for our audience? How do those work?
So the word phishing does refer to fishing as in catching fish, but it's spelled with a PH, which in case your audience isn't a kind of a techie audience, the internet world likes to make funny versions, alternate versions of existing words in order to both relate them and distinguish them. So phishing with a PH means trying to catch somebody with bait, and when it's a phishing email, you're catching somebody with bait via email. And the difference between phishing and whaling is that phishing tends to be more blanket and let's see who I get, more like throwing a net, versus whaling, which is throwing a spear. Well, actually, there's a term called spear fishing as well, which is the same thing, but whaling means spear fishing, but to a big target, let's say a CEO or something like that. Yeah, sorry, I hope that was clear.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, and you just took it to another level. I didn't even know that you could do spear phishing or that it happened. And so I do know that people have their accounts stolen. And the worst experience I had was I lost my Facebook business account. And then my tip for people is make sure you have more than one admin so you can get it back. But I know on Twitter, usually there's one admin and those can be taken. So, and then it's really hard to get back. It seems like these social media platforms are not very responsive. Maybe they are if you're a giant company, but what can you do if your account is stolen? How do you get it back, or can you?
Well, you can, and they I think they get it. I don't think they're necessarily trying to make things difficult, but it's more just that their business model has that flaw. They're
Okay.
heavily automated, self-service, and
Mhm.
they're just not going to have a lot of support. That said, I don't have any special tips for getting around that. In fact, I've known people who've appealed to somebody they know just works in an organization or something, just to, that had nothing to do with support, and just please help. So I do think it's a problem, but just the normal channels. I don't know what else to keep trying. I've never heard of anybody having to litigate that, but I bet that's happened too.
Yeah, you never know. So, how can your behavior lead across social media lead to phishing at your company? Are there things that employees can do to keep their company more safe?
Well, you're actually bringing up an important point about controls in an organization that
Okay.
are often neglected, because we consider social media a non-company activity, right? You don't tell somebody, please use Facebook, please don't use Facebook. I
Mhm.
mean, we think that's like use or don't use a phone, or live here, don't live here. But the truth of the matter is, it does matter to the organization, and I do believe companies do have some right to give instructions to their employees about behavior that is expected off duty, and
Mhm.
that doesn't include social media. Now, without getting into the whole debate about granularly, what can be done there, but I think it's absolutely legitimate for controls, policies, and maybe even checks and audits to be put in place to review what employees are doing on social media. Certainly, when hiring people too, of course,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
and things like don't misrepresent the company,
Mhm.
don't break the law, don't disparage anybody in some way, or express desire for harm. I mean,
Mhm.
things that to a good extent are already illegal, for one thing,
Right.
but that to point out to those employees that you can't help it, but you always represent the company. Now, remember, there's a platform called LinkedIn too, which is also social media,
Right.
that where is more business oriented, and people tout their title and place of employment. Um, uh, so there's a much more direct connection. But even on Facebook, that's often
Mhm.
listed, and it's not like people can't find that other ways. So you do represent your company, and you do have a responsibility to behave well. Now, here's how that can be abused. If I were a criminal, I wanted to try to get some malware installed in an organization, or get some kind of access, or trick somebody into sending a wire transfer. These are all fairly common, sadly.
Wow.
I would pretend to be somebody, or I
Mhm.
would express some existing knowledge. I mean, maybe something that's most familiar to people are things like, oh, I call you and I pretend I'm your bank, and oh, I need to confirm that give me your PIN number now so I can, confirm this, or something like that. Well, if they called you, of course, that's already suspicious. But
Right.
imagine now if they're armed with a little bit of information about you.
Mhm.
They're armed with a spouse name. They're armed with an address, a zip code. They're armed with, now, can they capture something like account number? Maybe that's information they got somewhere else. And that's not something you usually get from us from social media, but they might be able to get what bank you're with, for instance, because maybe you liked something or posted something. I mean, it gets if you did this for a living, imagine how good you would get at garnering that information and putting two and two together, and then walking in the door, so to speak, armed with a good amount of knowledge, such that you can fool somebody that you're some kind of
Mhm.
authority, or you're somebody, that they know but you're not, and then trick them into a number of different behaviors. So yeah,
Yeah.
and there's some great YouTube clips, by the way, of people who have thwarted those fishers. They're fun. I don't want to make light of it, but it's
Well, yeah, it's something you need to be aware of. And I'll give a quick story. I had a company contact me and they saw that I was a photographer. So they offered me a job at GoPro, and I was very excited because I get to shoot. I love nature. So they sent me this questionnaire. Can you please answer these questions? I spent a lot of time on it. And they had the right name of the person from the company, but this was like another person, it was like an
yeah.
assistant or something. So I went ahead and I filled it out. And then they said, great, you're hired. They gave me a good salary. And they said, here's all you need to do. you need to send us your bank number so that we can charge for this equipment. And here's everything you're going to get. And I was like, stop right there. I was just really, first of all, I was really embarrassed. I had gone so far, but it sounded so exciting because I love photography. How cool would it be to work for GoPro? And they're going to pay me so much. And then what they really wanted was my bank account number. So that was just a real surprise to me. And I've talked to other people who've said, and you wouldn't think this, I didn't think that in the recruiting industry, there's a lot of this kind of activity where companies, not really, but people who are
well, they're often cases they're companies, actually they're just criminals, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. Criminals representing the company. Yes, exactly. So anyway, it's kind of you have to be on your guard, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. And looking at your quote from Industry Week, I think it was this month, you said, what worries me is that cybercrime is possibly now getting big enough. And you said you ain't seen nothing yet. And I know here in Charlotte, a whole community college was taken down like to the ground, and then they had to build right back up to get in business. And I just want to underscore for everyone who's listening, if you think this is light talk, it is serious business. So let's talk about some cybersecurity do's and don'ts for social media.
Well, absolutely. Don't put up information that is not just like private, you care about it, you don't want people to know about it, but information that could tie you to any kind of, let's say, service access or financial or, and I get it. People are going to put things like what school they went to and things like that, and it's hard to exclude that. But things like that can help identify you. So try to avoid identifying information. Be very careful who you're friends with. A lot of people create fake accounts. Don't just accept them. Usually it gets pretty clear whether something's fake or not, but they're getting smarter. And this is a little bit what I mean by you ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, right now there were a lot of easy prey out there for the criminals. And once that easy prey is gone, they're going to get, start using more sophisticated tactics. Then also it's very important to make sure that you are, turning off accounts you don't use. It's very important to be changing passwords. I strongly recommend the use of a password manager. There are a number of really good ones out there. I won't give a commercial, but they're all good. Really, look at their pricing model and whatnot. They're all really good. That makes it easier for you to change passwords. It makes it easier to have different passwords for different ones in case your password gets phished, or one of these services, by the way, themselves gets hacked and their passwords get pulled in. If you could turn on MFA, I don't know if you know what MFA is, multi-factor authentication, where there's a pop-up comes up, or you go to an app on your phone, or you use a hardware key, so that it's harder then for somebody to use your password if they get it. That not all services use it, and sometimes it's not convenient. In some cases it's disabled for certain reasons. I could give examples, but wherever you can deploy that, even with personal accounts like social media, because they could do damage if they're in there, if they do get it. We didn't talk about that so much. We talked more about just the information that they're getting. Now also instruct your children and other people around you, people very close to you. Correct people when you see them doing kind of bad behavior, putting things out that might be identifying information, whatnot. One that people understand clearly are things like, don't tell everybody you're going on a vacation. Tell them about it afterwards, perhaps,
Right, exactly. Yeah, because people could they know you're gone. So
yeah. And these are all kind of lightweight things, admittedly. These aren't this like gigantic exposure, but they're all breadcrumbs.
Right.
Pieces that the criminals will pick up. So just do what you can. And I'm not telling people don't get on social media, because it's wonderful, but just, be wary, realize there are criminals out there. Think about if you're in a public room and you're just yelling out all these things, think about, what you'd say. And let's not ignore the whole reputational side of things, both for your career and your employer and your community. I actually think that's just as valuable, even though those aren't as directly related to crime and safety. They do matter a lot too. So it really should be part of the conversation.
So when you say reputation, could you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Well, if you're saying terrible things about people, let's say, or
Okay.
something like that, or you're just behaving badly, if you're just being a jerk, um, that maybe that's your style, or maybe that you think you're
Yeah.
accomplishing something with that. But think twice, because you're affecting other people. Again, your family, your community, your
Mm-hmm.
employer, our country, frankly. We really want to be civil. I think there's absolutely more than adequate ways to have a powerful discussion about things that are
Mm-hmm.
passionate to us without behaving badly, without disparaging somebody, without being mean,
Mm-hmm.
or just, or certainly without expressing any kind of like threat or violence. That probably is, and that rises to the level of criminal. So that, of course, would be the number one thing to make sure you're you know calling people out on.
Right. Yeah, I really agree with that. And people say, well, I could take down the post, just don't put it up to begin with.
Yeah, we
My
could do
goal is to
better.
light up people's social media. And I tell people, share your best side. You can talk about things that how to fix things or whatever you want. But yeah, you want to show your best side that you can on social media. So we've talked about a lot, and I guess I would like to ask you a little bit about what does your company do and how do you help protect our freedom that comes with security?
Well, the reason why we say that, because security gives us freedom, is because um, it's important to know why you're doing things. It's
Mm-hmm.
important to certainly to be driven, whatnot. But because it just shines a light on all of your activity. If you always have this understanding of why it is we're going about the day to day. And in our case, we're kind of, think of us as enablers, as and I'd say this about technologists in general. We have this, I don't know. Our passion for technology isn't just that it's cool. It's that it's cool because it empowers people. It allows people to really, do new things, do things better, be happier, communicate with one another, etc. Social media is an awesome example of that, right? Look how
Right.
awesome that is.
Mm-hmm.
That the whole world is connected, and we can, talk to anybody and be a community of all sorts. I consider them overlapping communities. And in business, what that freedom results in is innovation and moving fast. And especially in businesses who are just starting out, think about how empowering it is to just click a button and start a business. You hear, now you've got email, now you got a website,
Mm-hmm.
now you've got licenses, now everything, banking, etc. It's so much easier to get started and to do things and to try. Now, those only work if they're not broken, if they're not hacked, if they're not dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we have these nice things? Is because there's somebody out there that's protecting us. And we thought of that in terms of kind of law enforcement, let's say, in the past. But no, it's a lot about like locks and keys and good behavior. I wish there were no criminals.
Yeah, don't we
But
all?
yeah, of course, and this is age old. I mean, these guys are the pirates of today.
Yep.
The story about the British and the Spanish and the pirates and whatever is
Yeah.
strangely parallel to this, what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do we do? Well, let's do our best to create some good, safe lanes and help people so that they're not afraid to
Mm-hmm.
go do things online, so that they're not afraid to build businesses, so that they're not afraid to innovate and try out new functions, applications, services. The whole digital transformation, moving to the cloud. Imagine how scary that was at the beginning. Oh, I don't know, who they are, and my data is going to be there. Who has access to it? They're right to be afraid of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we give them back that freedom, that sense
Mm-hmm.
of freedom, that true freedom? And that's by giving them security. So onShore Security is one of many companies who do this. We have a certain focus. There's the world of cybersecurity is pretty wide.
Mm-hmm.
Our focus is detection. We're kind of like the cops at the monitors kind of thing, or
Mm-hmm.
the auditor, the regulator reviewing the bank data afterwards to identify cases of fraud, whatnot. Our work is mostly boring. I think it's more like accounting than it is like firefighting. People like to think it's all firefighting. There's definitely some firefighting, but far, far more is reviewing data all day, every day. Data that's garnered from customers' networks. We're mapping that against threat intelligence. We call that correlating, where we're taking multiple disparate pieces of data and relating them. Now this all results in let's call it like a model for their networks that we start to understand. Now it's a changing model, but that dynamic model, we can still understand it well enough where we can see when it's moving in a direction that doesn't seem right. And so we investigate, and we find threat actors trying to get in, or in some cases are already in and working their way in. In the business world, the attacks that have gone on, in fact, some of the big ones that got a lot of attention, they've been going on for a while, but they hadn't triggered yet because the threat actor, the criminal, is working their way and trying to quietly get into the right places, the best places, identify where the crown jewels are, so to speak, that's a term, or that where there are other access, or by the way, to launch to other organizations. Their high value target may be elsewhere, like in the case of the big SolarWinds attack, which is pretty much what I'm referring to when I say you ain't seen nothing yet. So that's what I mean by security gives us freedom. We're really talking about businesses. I don't want you to slow down. I don't want you to stop innovating. I don't want you to think twice about you want to try something new. I just want you to do it with cybersecurity right there next to you.
Wow, it's such a great mission and so important, and it's ever evolving. And I'm sure these cyber criminals are thinking of new ways to thwart everyone's efforts. So we need somebody there to really keep ahead of the game. And so thank you so much. And Stel, I ask everyone, what's your word of the day?
Today, I'm going to say brightness.
Brightness. Ooh.
Yeah. Today, I want to see a lot of that.
I love it.
I'm going to be outside.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think you said you're going to go outside and sail. So you'll see a lot of brightness for sure. And you do add a lot of brightness to your clients' projects and their business. You help them keep going. That's all very exciting. And what an empowering mission for you and for the people you work with. So I want to thank you so much for your time today. It was wonderful. I feel like I'm so much better informed. I learned so many terms that I didn't know about. And for anyone who is interested in checking out your company and what you do, how can they find you online?
onshore.com, ONSHORE.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks again, Stel. And thank you all for listening. Once again, if you want to hear more of these interviews, please look up Growing Social Now, wherever you listen to podcasts online. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome.